Set up.
Hello.
Hi, Kyle. How are you?
Sir. You?
How's the in-laws' house?
What's that?
You still at the in-laws' house?
No, I escaped. I've now completely taken over my dad's condo.
How's
I was very fortunate that he has another place to live, and he very graciously, he and his wife very graciously offered for us to be able to stay at their place as long as we needed, and that's a very fortunate situation for me to be in.
Yeah, for sure.
The water heater just went out in his house, and I think I might be buying him a water heater.
Well, the good thing is those aren't too horrible.
True. And actually, I think it's less than the rent that I'd be paying anyway. So
yeah, I had to replace the one in the house in Washington when I moved before I moved out. So yeah, it wasn't that bad.
Did you have any trouble selling your house? Because you were in Olympia, right?
Yeah, I was in Olympia. I thought it was going to take forever, dude, and it was like gone like that. But
that's great.
Two things: the house value in my neighborhood went up. So I deliberately, because I wanted to sell it fast, I deliberately underpriced it. I still made $40,000 on it, but I deliberately underpriced it, and it just flew off. It went off quick.
Kind of one of those pros and cons, like take a little less but get it done, or hold on to it and risk paying the mortgage.
Exactly.
On two places.
Yeah, exactly.
I assume you bought your home in Yuma, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I actually didn't close on it until after we sold the Washington house. That was a contingent.
That's nice.
Yeah, so I was perfectly fine being homeless in an Airbnb for a couple months, but I was not paying 2 mortgages. I can tell you that.
Sure. No, for sure.
So I invited Lee onto the show today to, help add commentary. So he's lurking in the background here.
Commentary.
All right. And with that, I think we'll go ahead and get started with the boilerplate.
All right.
Oh.
So, Clint, what can people expect on SEO this week?
Oh, that was fast. We skipped all the rest of it. What happened to the contest and stuff?
I scrambled to just make a show for today, so it's late on the boilerplate.
Oh, okay. Well, so this week, Meet the Expert, we had Bruno Suzanne. We actually talked about go high level, obviously, because that's just his thing. But we talked about hiring people for your tasks, some processes to go about doing that, etc. So that was a great conversation. And then we looked at a lot of the news that was out. One that I thought you guys might be interested in is the structured data testing tool. They took the rich snippet ones live, and then they said they're going to remove the structured data testing tool, which is complete horse crap. Because that rich snippet one, all it does is it tells you whether you did the schema right for rich snippets. The rest of the schema, like organization, local business, article, it doesn't give you any feedback whatsoever on that. So if you hate that, go to the Google Webmasters Twitter and express your dislike for that change. So hopefully they change their mind on that.
That's going to come up again in today's topic. So it's well-timed.
Nice.
So if you haven't seen SEO this week, you should check it out. It's another great YouTube show. So be sure to look that up after this show if you haven't been following it, and remember to subscribe. Kyle, do you have anything to announce?
Well, we do. Today is the contest winner for those that haven't participated, correct?
Is today the last day, or are we announcing today and it's too late?
I don't know, Ted. What are we doing? Have we already picked a winner? I don't know. I don't know how the
works. It may be too late. If you want to enter the contest, you have to go join internetmarketing.gold, find the contest post, and leave a message. Be sure to fill out your profile. That's also a requirement. But it might be too late. So hopefully you got in there.
I don't think so. I thought it was supposed to be EOD Pacific time.
Yeah, it could be end of day Pacific time, but you know, if you want to get in, like, do it now. Like, it's literally your last chance. But with that, we'll just move on because we've brought up that contest for weeks now. So, hunting for on-page tactics. So I've been having a crazy week, and today I was thinking about, you know, what can I do for the show? And I figured, let's just like look at you know, something out in the field and dissect what they're doing. And the very first example I came across was just remarkable. And I was like, okay, let's just look at this one example today. And so that's what we're going to do. I'm going to turn my camera off. So the keyword I decided to use was purple frisbee. I wanted it to be e-commerce related. I wanted it to be relatively low competition. I wanted it to have a focus of both product pages and category pages. And I kind of wanted it to pull some of the big players. And so purple frisbee was awesome. It's like, you know, very low competition, and the whole first page was just filled with big players. We had one category page at the top, and the rest was just followed by product pages. And it's like, wow, that's really interesting. And so let's kind of understand that category page, because everybody wants to rank category pages well. And here's one that beat out all the products and just went straight to the top all by itself. And so the first thing I noticed was that the variations were very limited. So turns out frisbee and flying disc are the synonyms. And then there's purple, of course, and it didn't do anything else in terms of the variations. It's just combinations of those words. Amazon took the first 3 spots, which I thought was really interesting, with the category page and 2 product pages. That's a really nice effect, and I think most online retailers would love to have outcomes like that. And then eBay was the runner-up, and Walmart after that. Walmart continued down below what we're seeing. So it's really interesting with, you know, a first place winner, a second place winner, and a third place winner. And so I really wanted to understand this Amazon success. We can see that it's a category page. It's flying discs. What's interesting is they set up a URL for purple flying discs. And so that was really fascinating. And it went into a result set because we can see the result schema markup here in the search result. Oh. And so I thought that was really interesting because, you know, is Amazon actually creating categories by color, or are they doing a clever trick to redirect target keywords to redirect URLs that then get like search results on Amazon indexed? Because a few years ago, I got a cease and desist about feeding search results into Google. And, you know, this kind of looks like Amazon's doing the same thing that Google asked me to stop doing, but they're letting Amazon do it. I mean, that's pretty cool. So I want to look at that because that's interesting. So it turns out that Amazon is, in fact, submitting search result pages to Google. And so what's happening is that URL that we saw on the previous page with the flying discs, purple disc sports, is getting redirected to a keyword search for flying discs. And it's activating the faceted navigation filter for purple. And so that's cool. They have this URL system where they can redirect and hit the right keywords and sorts and filters in order to give a result set for Google to then crawl and index. And so that's what we are seeing with this mechanism. And that's awesome because it's so cool when you can create a database of information and then surface all of the keyword searches that would apply to that database as content to then be indexed. Like, you can generate absolutely staggering amounts of traffic if you can get those pages indexed. And that's what we're seeing Amazon doing. And so this is the page. And so there's some interesting things happening here. We see the faceted navigation. This purple word in bold is actually a link for the purple filter. We got the pagination results here, and those don't quite match what's in search. So that was interesting. There's the keyword search that got redirected. And then the product tokens. And when we look at how those variations that we saw before are occurring in the source code of this page, we see some patterns. And it's a very complicated problem to even count matches on a page. Like, most people don't ever think about how difficult it actually is to do it correctly. And in fact, most SEO tools out there don't count all the match variations correctly. There's a lot of different ways you can simply count how many times the keywords are on the page. And I wanted to show that because it's not something that most SEOs understand. So we have Frisbee and Flying and Disc, and we can see that Frisbee they don't use a lot. Makes sense. It's a brand. And Flying Disc is actually the thing, and so you can have off-brand Frisbees that are referred to as flying discs. And the keyword counts are all over the place for those. But then you have like your partial match and exact match. So Flying Disc, it could be in a URL slug with a hyphen. It could be URL encoded with a plus sign. It could be UTF-8 encoded with the hex codes, so %20. It can be plural form versus singular form. Then we have the addition of the color, so purple being involved, and then all of those things. And there are so many things that can happen in just trying to detect the keyword on the page. Oops, I am missing. Oh, go to this slide. So the other complications in counting matches include things like HTML entities, the UTF-8 encoding, the URL encoding. There's a concept called over-encoding, which can also happen. And that's where you have a combination of these things because they're feeding through a pipeline. So you have JavaScript that wants it UTF-8 encoded, but what's UTF-8 encoded by the JavaScript was already URL encoded when it came through the protocol. So you get this double and triple encoding that can happen based on how the applications are built. And so there's over encoding. And then there's the URL slugs. People encode those in different ways. Sometimes they use underscores. Sometimes they use hyphens. Sometimes they will encode with UTF-8 or URL encode. You know, there are different ways that you can handle the URLs, and you know, those happen as well because those URLs then appear all throughout the page. They occur in the product URLs, they occur in the pagination, things of that nature. And then when you get to websites that support multiple language scenarios, then you have to deal with different language character sets. And sometimes there are even differences in white space, like people might use 2 spaces instead of 1, or a tab instead of a space, or a new line, or a return character. And those extra white spaces and the different types of white space can even be complicating factors, because they change what all the UTF-8 encodings would be. And so they have different codes, and it's all different things that you have to be able to detect and parse. And it makes it very difficult to correctly count all the matches on a page. And so when we go back and look at this, we can see that, if you look at flying space disk, there were 26. Flying hyphen disk, there were 3. Flying plus disk, there were 133. Flying %20 disk, there were 18. And really, you need to add those all together, because just one of them alone would be an incorrect count. And then when I looked at the keyword density for this result set, it was astonishing. I got a correlation coefficient of negative 0.93, which is like the strongest correlation I've seen in a long time. And so what I think we're seeing here is a very low competition keyword and pages that generally don't have backlinks. So really all they have going on is their relevancy score. We've kind of stumbled across a natural in the field single variable test here that is showing us almost a perfect keyword density test result. And so I found that really interesting, that sometimes you just stumble across a naturally occurring single variable test, and that's kind of what we have here.
What did you use to make that graph? Is that something of your own, or is that a correlate thing someone else can duplicate?
Yeah, that's part of the Cora tool set. That's correlate anything. And so it lets you plug in your data and then create the correlation coefficient in the chart. And what's weird about this Amazon page is it's kind of a bare bones system. Like, they're not aggressively SEOing these pages. They have a suboptimal title. Doesn't even say purple in it. They just get the keyword portion of the redirect into the title. And then there's no meta description, no meta keywords, no schema markup, which boggled my mind. No open graph tags, none of it. No canonical URL. And they don't even leverage an H1 tag. They have 2 H1s on there, but they're not keyword focused, and I'll show them to you later. And so imagine if somebody came up to you and said, "Hey, I have this web page I'm doing SEO for. I have a really crappy title, no meta description, no schema, no open graph, no canonical. I'm not using H1s, and I have no backlinks to the page, and I'm ranking #1 in Google for my target term, and I'm beating eBay and Walmart with it." I mean, my mind is just melting based on this example. Because how is this happening? So I think it's a combination of 2 things. Let me first jump ahead. Where'd it go? Oh, yeah, here we go. So I skipped way ahead. I'll go back and go over those other slides, but there were no results found when I searched for the redirect URL, and there are no search results found when I did a quoted search for the URL that it was redirecting to. And then when I did a quoted search on just the search page with the URL slug, none of the parameters, all that came up was the search page. There's no other results for it. This page has no indexed backlinks, which is remarkable because it's ranking number 1 and it's beating very big other sites as well. So this page is, it's got some black magic going on. And I think what's happening is because it's low competition, it's ranking based almost entirely on its keyword density and its domain authority. And I know that Google swears up and down that they don't have domain authority, but we saw with the AWS hosted pages on S3, when that was working because there was a domain authority component that helped those static pages rank well. And then Google made changes and those became less effective, but it was there. Like, we were gaming domain authority when that exploit was alive. And so we know that it is capable in the system that pages that belong to a really authoritative domain can get some sort of ranking benefit. And I think we're kind of seeing that here as well. Can't prove it, but I suspect it because no backlinks, none of the other things. We're kind of down to keyword density and domain authority being the two things in play. I put the URL. You mentioned the structured data testing tool because I looked through it and I couldn't find any markup. So I started going to various tools to see if anything could detect any schema on this page. And none of the tools I went to could detect any schema. And I went to the Facebook debuggers, like, okay, do they have like a component that's dynamically adding Open Graph or something? No, it actually complained that all of the Open Graph properties are missing. So yeah, there's just nothing of that kind on this page. And so it really looks like what's going on here is largely just happening in the product tokens. So that's where the magic is with whatever they're doing here in terms of the relevancy. It's all in the product tokens that they show in the search results. And so I started looking at one of the variations. I started looking at the zones that are using the word purple, because that's one of the important variants. And so what we find is that they largely occur in the product tokens and in the pagination of the page. And in the product tokens, they're in the URL hrefs, they're in the image alts, it's in the title attributes for the links, it's in the link text itself, and it's in the descriptive text nodes, the product names for the tokens. And Amazon is only doing 25 tokens per page here, but you can see just from this one example that, between purple and frisbee and flyer and flying and disc, they're getting 10 plus keyword variations per product token. So that's like 250 matches for one of these pages. That's pretty decent. And otherwise, it's a fairly thin page, so the density is probably going to be okay. And the e-commerce person in me wanted to look at, what features do they put into these tokens. There are aggregate ratings, but there's no schema around them, and they're just links to the information. There's some shipping costs that's there. There's nearly sold out notifications, which is cool. That's a good practice to do. There's alternate vendors, and then their membership program qualifications. But there are some mysteries here on this page. So for one, in the Google result, we see the result schema markup, which comes from the category result set schema, but there's no schema on this page. So Google is detecting it and converting what they find on Amazon into the schema somehow. So that's a magical capability right there, where Google is taking a page with no schema, parsing information on it, and then presenting it in schema format. The other mystery is that it's not in sync. So this is not exactly the same data that's live on the website. So it looks like Google maybe has an older copy of what the page is than what's currently there. So it's interesting that it's not the same data, because Amazon has 59 results and the copy Google's working with has 77. But it's just remarkable that this all happens without any schema on the page. The second mystery is the first H1 on this page contains the form for doing the keyword search. And the keyword is in there. Oh, let me go back. It's in there. It's right here, flying discs, but it's in a hidden form variable. Now, this hidden form input is nested deeply inside of an H1 tag, but does that really count? Like, we should test putting input controls, hidden input controls in H1s and cloaking keywords in the hidden input controls. This is the coolest H1 cloaking I've ever seen, if this in fact works. So totally need to test putting keywords and hidden inputs nested inside of H1s. That's cool. If that works, then there's a lot of black hat stuff that can be done with that type of hidden input cloaking. And kudos to Amazon for figuring it out.
Ted, to your point too about tools reading that's going to be very difficult for a lot of tools to see all of that. Scripting and classes and stuff like that go inside that people will nest into other tags makes it really hard for it to be seen.
Well, most SEO tools would get this whole block. Let's get the H1 tag and everything in it. So all the way down here to the close H1 tag, all this HTML. And then they're going to say, let's delete all the HTML tags, because those are immaterial to the text that's outside of the HTML text, the 1 to 24 of 59 and featured and price high to low. Mm-hmm. It's not going to pick up, if it deletes the HTML, it's not going to pick up the keyword mention.
No, you're right. I'm reminded of somebody that contacted on Pop a while back, and they were doing this cloaking method, and they were really upset that Pop couldn't find it. And it came out that they were doing a cloaking method, and I was like, shouldn't you be happy? Like, you figured it out. You got something that we can't see.
And so, but if Google detects this, and they very well might, this is potentially a very cool exploit. So I was shocked when I saw a form inside of an H1, blew my mind. And that the keyword was in the H1, hidden in a hidden field of the form.
Well, I'm also reminded of something that you've talked about several times on the show, which is exactly how do you calculate keyword density? What's the numerator, what's the denominator, and what's Google using? So is Google using the value of flying discs here in this, input field as part of their calculation or not?
Yeah,
and
our
what
default values, and form inputs part of word count and match count. I mean, that's a big deal. Yeah, that's a very good point. So that was mystery 2 with this page. And then mystery 3, they have a second H1. I thought people were being sued for having multiple H1s. You mean nobody bothered to check Amazon if they were doing the thing that they're suing online retailers for? And that's so how did that slip past things? So apparently, there's this thing for, I guess, the ADA, the Disabilities Act, that you have to have one H1 on the page because it's used by screen readers to find the start of the main content. And so here it has a second one, but the second one also doesn't mean anything to the keyword. It just has a disclaimer. It's not about the topic. Its price and other details may vary based on size and color. It's a disclaimer in an H1. And it's boilerplate too. Like they repeat that on all pages. So I found that remarkable as well. So reducing Amazon's key tactics here. They're indexing Amazon search results for target keywords with a proprietary custom-built redirect system. They're using 25 products per page with about 10 or more variations per product token. So when you go and look at other online stores, I bet they're not using their keywords 10 times per product token. So that's pretty aggressive. That I would think would be on the verge of being considered keyword stuffed. And it looks like that they're aiming for about 300 variations per page with this math, which is what we saw when we were searching for the keywords in the beginning. And this isn't ranking because of backlinks. This isn't a backlink page. This page has no backlinks. And I bet a lot of the keyword search being indexed scenarios aren't being linked to. They're just getting indexed. It's just a pure relevance tactic. And there's probably a component of something like a domain authority helping boost them, which is why they probably rise above eBay and Walmart and the other players. So it largely appears to be a relevance and domain authority type play. And they're dialing in at about 2 to 3% keyword density. And let me go back to that keyword density part. Because another interesting part, so we got Amazon here in spots 1, 2, and 3, and then eBay, and then Walmart. It was a real nice breakout of these players. So here we have Amazon at 2.3 to 2.5. Here we have eBay at 1.1 to 1.3, or sorry, 1.1 to 2.1. And then here we have Walmart at 0.7. You can see that these pages, and these pages, I mean, they're tiered based on keyword density. I mean, that's remarkable to me. And so there are opportunities that I'm seeing in this type of keyword, for purple frisbee. It's easy to tune on page better than what Amazon's done here. we could actually tune the title. We could actually have a keyword rich H1. We could actually have 50 tokens instead of 25. We could have more keyword matches per token. There's just so many things that we could do better than what they've done here that, I can't help but think that you could totally compete with an Amazon page like this. And you can definitely compete with their backlinks, because I couldn't find one to this page. And ultimately, if you had no other option, you could sell on Amazon to hijack the Amazon result. And competing with the density is going to be quite easy. I mean, they're looking at, 2.5%. You can compete with that. That's not obscene amounts of keyword density. So it looks like there's real opportunities to do better than what they've already done. And so I thought that was a pretty remarkable just find. Just the first keyword I tried this morning stumbled across this page. What do you guys think? Any thoughts?
Well, I have several. If we put down the Google, guidelines and stuff like that, and go a little black hat, we know that Google looks at the text that's buried in the HTML of the page that may not appear on the page. Did you take a look at the core report to see what the non-clean density was?
I didn't pull a full Cora report on it. I did compare the clean variation density to the clean exact match, but I don't know the raw.
Because a lot of times with pages like that one, or Yelp pages, or other directory pages, I mean, they're just, stuffed to the gills. If you got a plumber page, you got Bob's Plumbing, Fred's Plumbing, AAA Plumbing, so you've got the keyword all over the page. And then when you factor in the Twitter cards and the other stuff that goes on underneath the page, I mean, it's everywhere. The density gets ridiculously high on those pages.
In this example, I did manually go through the source, and there's a little bit of keyword reference in that H1 with the search form, and there's a little bit of keyword reference in the pagination, but everything else was in those product tokens. And so that's one of the reasons it was so remarkable to me, is their system is just simply built around the relevancy of the product tokens. And they didn't do the title, they didn't do the H1s, they didn't do any schema, they didn't do any open graph, they didn't give a crap about any of that. And they got to #1 on Google. They didn't do any backlinks, and they beat eBay and Walmart doing it. And that, I'm just speechless, because it defies everything you'd hear in SEO.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. A lot of those sites do it. I know YouTube is another one that does it. Because I have some videos that I put out there with, let's say, service, plus city in the title of the video, and maybe 10 times in the description, the keyword or the variance of the keyword. But when you look at the source code, the keyword will appear 70, 80 times because of all the places they put it in, the different attributes and classifications that they use, just like Amazon does here. So, I think that level of keyword stuffing, you don't see on the page, but it's definitely there. And it seems like Google gives it a lot of credit.
Yeah. And what this is, how with Google and SEO, we often say that everything old is new again. The stuff comes back. This feels like that, because back in like 2005 to 2010, in that time frame, there were 3 massive Google updates: Google Instant, Google Caffeine, and Google Mayday. And the combination of those three things just annihilated long-term search traffic, because you couldn't get that long tail search pages to index in Google effectively. And Google Instinct got repealed. It got removed from the system. And then there was Caffeine and Mayday, and Caffeine was largely real-time processing, and Mayday affected the flow of PageRank through a website. So it made it so that if you nest your content, it's hard for the backlinks at the top of your website to provide any value down to those nested pages. And that's why all those long tail nested pages just kind of fell out of search. Well, what we have here is a system for getting long tail traffic back. Like, if you architect your system to look like what Amazon's doing here, now all of a sudden you can use a database and target keywords and get access to that long tail traffic for those keywords without any link building. Like, there's no links to this page. It's cool because, what's old is new again. It's like, this gives me hope that you could make long tail traffic plays using a system with this type of architecture.
Ted, you said there was no backlinks. Did you check to see? Obviously, it's Amazon, but is there any referring backlinks from internal on Amazon.com to that page?
I couldn't find any. I was specifically looking for index backlinks, so I should qualify that with it as no index backlinks. It's possible that there's something out there that is an index that's linking to it, but I couldn't find it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, this page was definitely an enigma for all of those reasons. But it's such a cool example to just stumble across out in the field.
Clint, with some of your testing with schema, have you found, without giving away too much, have you found the keyword stuffing within schema gets read?
Nope, you don't want to do that. It's horrible.
Fair enough.
Google is reading all of that schema. And if you're writing your schema properly, you can essentially, and you're putting it in a head, you're essentially giving them a roadmap to what your website is about. So there are some theories, and that's why they're shutting down the structured data testing tool, because people figured out that Google is leveraging that schema, and they're reading that schema, and they're identifying what the page is about. But when I say people, actually that number is really low, because there's a lot of people that turn on schema in their plugins and say, I've implemented schema, and they think they're doing great and wonderful things, but we've tested that and showed it is not doing anything. You actually legitimately have to build out your schema in a way that Google's going to read it. And if they don't have a data testing tool, then you don't know if they're reading it properly. So that's kind of why I'm up in arms, and I think everyone should be about that being shut off. So to answer your question, yeah, it's reading it just like you would do if you were doing class IDs and all that other stuff. If you're putting that into your HTML code, is doing it just like schema is, and you can, or it's reading that just like they are reading the schema stuff. So
cool. So Ted, if I'm a little guy and I've got a small e-com site, 25, 50 products, or something where I don't have an entire development team, how might I take advantage of this little discovery?
Well, the way you do it is you make it so that you can create RESTful URLs that redirect to your website search. And then you add any targeted search terms that you would want indexed to your sitemap that would redirect to keyword search on the website. So basically, you're surfacing those URLs into keyword searches into something like your sitemap or into the indexing API directly. What's that plugin you're working with, the Google one?
The one that was the Google Site Kit or something along those lines.
Yeah, something like that. I think that plugin set has the indexing API built into it.
It does, and also Rank Math has one. I'm not a fan of Rank Math, but they have a plugin that installs separately from it that connects to it as well. And every time you update a post or publish a new post, it pings the API. So there's that as an option if you don't want to use Sitekit.
And Lee, there's a question. Could this result, instead of being relevancy based or domain authority or backlink authority, instead of being based on those things, could this result be produced with traffic?
It's an interesting thing. I've found for largely for organic, when this is strictly an organic play, that traffic is a much lower factor than on page and backlink. So maybe with a very long tail search, but I don't think if I were going after purple frisbees or purple flying discs that I could displace any of the Amazon, eBay, or Walmart with traffic.
Yeah, so that to me sounds like the answer is probably not what's going on here. Might be technically possible in an experiment scenario, but far less likely in the field. So I guess that's it, unless you guys have any other questions or thoughts. Any final thoughts, Kyle? I think we lost Kyle. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us again for another episode of SEO Fight Club. We'll head back to networking. Be sure to check out SEO This Week. And it's another amazing show, so check that out. Bruno was on the show, and I like Bruno. Clint, are people still giving Bruno a lot of grief for being a young marketer? Or did people finally let up on him?
I think people let up on him. I mean, he didn't have any issues in my episode, but at the end of we really didn't talk about high level like he did to the extent in spring training. So that may have been a part of it. About his age, and I made fun of him. So.
Well, just remember, if we're not supposed to discriminate against old marketers, we probably shouldn't discriminate against young marketers. We shouldn't discriminate against any, minority group of marketers. We're all marketers. Don't be offended by marketing. It's what we do. So with that, thanks everyone. We'll see you next week.